Imagine an island that seems straight out of your worst nightmares. A remote place lost somewhere in the tumultuous waters of the Atlantic, where the weather changes in the blink of an eye and silence is as menacing as the howl of the storm. It is here on Eilean Mor that three men served, until one day, they simply disappeared, without a trace. In this material, I will take you on a journey that will unveil one of the most chilling secrets of modern history. Consider this. How is it possible that on an island where nothing could have escaped the attention of the keepers, they vanished without any warning? They left behind abandoned food, open books, and a silence that seems to scream with questions. What was Eilean Mor? A small island, or perhaps a trap that should never have been crossed? Before we dive into the details, you need to know one thing. This story does not have a simple ending. Scientists, detectives, even conspiracy theorists, everyone has tried to solve this mystery, and today, you will join them. This tale will keep your eyes glued to the screen. Are you ready for a journey to a place that consumed not only the bodies, but also the souls of three men? Meet the three men who were the guardians of light in the darkness, the keepers of Eilean Mor. Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur each had their own story, dreams, and fears. Ordinary men who took on an extraordinary job, cut off from the world, dependent on nature's mercy and each other. A trio of keepers whose daily life in the lighthouse should have been monotonous and predictable. But something went terribly wrong. Before they disappeared, each was aware of the risks. They faced harsh weather, solitude, and the responsibility for the safety of those at sea who relied on the light of their lighthouse. But none of them could have foreseen what was about to happen. When the supply ship arrived at the island, no one greeted the crew. The lighthouse was empty. The keepers had vanished. Their names became synonymous with a mystery that cannot be unraveled. Who were these men? What really happened in their final moments on that cursed island? Were they just victims of capricious nature, or did they become part of something far more disturbing? This story, like their fate, does not fade from memory. Consider, what would you do if you found yourself alone at the top of that island, knowing that three people had vanished under unexplained circumstances? It was an ordinary December day, just like many others on Eilean Mor. The lighthouse was operational, and everything at sea seemed to be in order. The three keepers were performing their daily duties. But what happened next initiated one of the greatest mysteries in history. The last message they sent to the mainland was calm, no warnings, no alarming signals, and then silence. Silence that stretched on for days. Days during which the sea had no answers, and Eilean Mor became a place of mysterious silence. What happened on that isolated island after sending that last message? Did the three keepers foresee the impending nightmare, or were they too busy with their daily tasks to notice that something inevitable was approaching? This is where the real puzzle begins, the moment when contact was lost, and the fate of the keepers disappeared into a fog of mystery. What could have caused people to disappear without a trace, without a struggle, without warning? As the supply ship sailed to Eilean Mor, the crew expected to see three men ready for exchange, smiling after days of solitary duty. But the island greeted them with something else: emptiness. No keepers, no signs of life. Only the lighthouse, dead and silent. The crew began to grow anxious. Perhaps the storm had detained the keepers? Maybe something had caught them by surprise, but they would surely arrive soon. Yet time passed and Eilean Mor remained silent. Something was wrong, something dark lurked behind that silence. The island, though small, now seemed to stretch into infinity, as if it had swallowed its guardians and had no intention of returning them to the world. How could three experienced keepers, men who knew how to survive on this harsh island, have disappeared without a trace? Did they become victims of something unforeseen, or did they know more than they could reveal in their last message? Captain Joseph Moore, the man responsible for delivering supplies, approached the island with growing unease. Something was amiss. Usually, the keepers would come out to greet the arrivals. This time, the island was silent. When Moore set foot on Eilean Mor, he felt something strange, an intuition, as if he had entered a place that had not seen a human for a long time. The lighthouse doors were locked, but not with a key. Inside, silence. In the kitchen, uneaten meals lay on the table, seemingly interrupted in haste. Chairs were overturned, and one of the keeper's coats hung on a hook, as if he had not had time to take it. There were no signs of violence or struggle. Something or someone had caused the men to vanish, leaving everything as if they would return shortly. But they did not return. Mor felt a cold shiver, and the silence filling the lighthouse was like an echo of something terrible he could not understand. Every corner of the lighthouse looked frozen in time. The wall clock had stopped. Marshall's notebook, one of the keepers, contained last entries describing a violent storm, even though no weather anomalies had been recorded in those days. "God is with us" were some of the last words written in the journal. These notes were filled with tension, as if something elusive was lurking on the island. Yet, the most disturbing discovery was the absence of the three men. No bodies, no traces. Only the lighthouse, silent, solitary, and full of mysteries. Imagine the feeling, an abandoned place that offers no answers yet screams with questions. What could have made the keepers abandon their post, endangering the lives of ships at sea? Was it truly the power of nature that consumed them mercilessly, or was it something we cannot explain? As Mor left the island, he knew one thing: this was not an ordinary mystery. With each passing day, it became increasingly clear that the disappearance of the three keepers was more than just a tragic accident. When investigators arrived at Eilean Mor, they found a place that seemed to tell its own strange story. But the longer they examined the details, the more the story seemed to defy understanding. No signs of struggle, no indications of panic, no clues. Only a few minor, unsettling details. One of the lighthouse doors was damaged, and a coastal barrier was shattered in one place, as if struck with tremendous force. But what could have had enough power to pull three grown men in without leaving any trace? These questions began to pile up. What could have happened? The keepers were experienced, aware of the dangers of the island, the sea, and the weather. How could they have simply vanished, leaving behind their daily lives as if they had stepped out for a moment and then dissolved into the air? The most intriguing element of this mystery was the last entries in the journal. Although the keepers were usually terse in their notes, the last days of their lives described something that sends chills down the spine. Marshall wrote about a strange storm that seemed to intensify, even though no similar phenomena were reported in the area. Descriptions of a strong wind trying to tear the lighthouse from its foundations appeared, and MacArthur, known for his tough character, was reportedly seen crying in fear. But how is this possible? Did the keepers fall victim to hallucinations? Or was something happening that went beyond human understanding? Some researchers suggest that the three men might have suffered a nervous breakdown due to isolation. But does this explain their disappearance? At the moment when the last words of the notebook spoke of God being with them, one thing became clear. Something terrified them. Something that perhaps did not allow them to leave in peace. And that only deepens the mystery. When faced with an unexplained mystery, people's minds begin to wander in search of answers. This was certainly the case with the keepers of Eilean Mor. The first theory put forward was also the most logical. A powerful wave, known as a freak wave, struck the island and swept the keepers into the icy waters of the Atlantic. It sounds reasonable, right? But there's a problem. Why would three experienced men leave the safety of the lighthouse during a storm? Why didn't at least one of them stay on guard, knowing how dangerous the waves in that region could be? And why are there no signs of a cataclysm on the island that could have swept them off the rocks? Then more unsettling theories emerged. People began to speculate about supernatural forces, ghosts of ancient sailors, drowned souls haunting the island, seeking revenge for their lost lives, or perhaps dark Celtic magic, as the Celts had revered Eilean Mor for centuries as a place of mysterious power. The island, separated from the world, always had a dark aura, as if something invisible lurked within its rocks. Could it be that the three keepers fell victim to something not of this world? For some, the answer to the mystery lies even further beyond our understanding. UFOs. Conspiracy theorists suggest that Eilean Mor was a place that attracted beings from another planet. Unexplained lights, strange sounds, mysterious disappearances. These scenarios feature in stories about encounters with extraterrestrial civilizations. Were the keepers witnesses to something that the human mind could not grasp? Others, more pragmatic researchers, suggest that an internal tragedy might have occurred. Isolation, long weeks alone with one's thoughts, intense storms exerting psychological pressure. Is it possible that one of the keepers experienced a nervous breakdown and, in a moment of madness, brought disaster upon himself and the others? Regardless of which theory seems most plausible, one thing is clear: none provide a complete answer. It is this elusiveness, this lack of definitive evidence, that makes the story of the Eilean Mor keepers continue to captivate and fascinate people worldwide. Or maybe there is no answer at all? Perhaps this mystery is one of those that will never be solved. Despite numerous searches and intensive investigations, the mystery of the disappearance of the three keepers of Eilean Mor remains unsolved to this day. After their disappearance, the island was thoroughly searched. Research teams, investigators, and sailors spent weeks combing every corner of this isolated piece of land. Even the most advanced technology of the time was used to understand what might have happened, but there was no trace of the keepers, no bodies, no items that could explain their sudden disappearance. All that was found was the silent lighthouse and its abandoned interiors, as if the island had decided to keep its secret forever. Anyone who came close to solving the mystery returned with even more questions. Why were there no signs of struggle? What made them leave the lighthouse, leaving food and notes on the table? Could three experienced men really have perished due to a sudden accident that left no evidence? Or did the island hide something we may never know? Even though more than 100 years have passed since the event, the disappearance of the keepers still intrigues and fascinates people around the world. Anyone interested in mysteries, history, or conspiracy theories cannot resist the temptation to try to solve this dark enigma. Books, documentaries, articles, the topic returns like a boomerang, and Eilean Mor has become a symbol of unexplained phenomena. Every year, new researchers attempt to find answers, but all efforts end up in the same place, at the boundary between facts and speculation. What really happened to Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur? Were they witnesses to something supernatural? Or did they fall victim to a nature that proved too harsh? Perhaps we will never know the answers because some mysteries are simply too deeply rooted in history to uncover. One thing is certain, the quiet and unassuming island of Eilean Mor still attracts those who believe that even in the greatest mysteries, there might be a shred of truth. Today, the island of Eilean Mor remains almost as mysterious it was in December 1900, when the three lighthouse keepers disappeared without a trace. The lighthouse, although now automated, still stands proudly on that harsh, windy rock overlooking the boundless ocean. Visitors brave enough to come to the island speak of a strange atmosphere, an almost tangible feeling of an invisible presence. The island seems to harbor secrets that attract some and repel others. The silence that followed the disappearance of the lighthouse keepers still endures. Winds blow over the rocks, waves crash against the shores, but no one knows the answer to the question, what really happened that day? Is Eilean Mor itself the guardian of this mystery, refusing to reveal its secret no matter how many years pass? Every step on this island stirs unease. It has a dark aura, as if time stopped the moment the keepers vanished. The story of the missing lighthouse keepers has become a legend. Many claim their spirits still haunt the island, that one can hear their whispers in the wind, and sometimes even see lights in the lighthouse, which has long been automated. Others believe that the mystery of their disappearance is an eternal warning to those who try to tame the forces of nature and solitude. Modern technologies, research, and theories have failed to uncover the truth. But perhaps this is the strength of the story, its ambiguity. Maybe the true value of this tale lies not in the answers, but in the questions it raises. The story of the lighthouse keepers of Eilean Mor has become a symbol of the idea that not every riddle needs to be solved, and some mysteries are simply too deep to understand. And you? Will you dare to try to find an answer? Or perhaps this story, like many before you, will haunt and fascinate you, leaving you with questions that may never be answered? The mystery of Eilean Mor endures, and its silence seems to speak more than any words. The story of the disappearance of the lighthouse keepers from Eilean Mor has left not only a riddle, but also deep reflections on human nature, solitude, and our place in the world. The disappearance of 3 men under unexplained circumstances has become a symbol not only of an inexplicable phenomenon, but also of our deepest fears and questions about what can happen when we are alone in the face of the unknown. The lighthouse keepers, who were meant to be the guardians of light at the end of the world, ultimately became part of a mystery that is difficult to explain rationally. Their story is a reminder of the fragility of human life and how little we can predict in the face of nature's mysteries or forces that are beyond our comprehension. So, what remains after their disappearance? The emptiness that fills the island and the questions that still remain unanswered. While we cannot change the past, we can consider what their story says about us, our desire to understand, and our limits in the search for truth. The mystery of the lighthouse keepers of Eilean Mor is one of those stories that never loses its relevance. Why? Because people have a natural need to understand the unknown, to uncover secrets, and to find meaning in chaos. The story of Eilean Mor is a tale that poses questions with no clear answers, but which compel us to reflect on our own lives and our place in the world. Uncertainty, emotions, fear, and fascination, these are what keep this story alive. Anyone who studies it faces a dilemma. Are they seeking the truth, or merely looking for a narrative that mirrors our own fears and dreams? Eilean Mor, with its wild beauty and impenetrable mystery, will always remind us that some stories have their place in our imagination, even though we can never fully understand them. This island, though seemingly tranquil at first glance, still hides a secret that will never be completely revealed. What are your reflections on this story? What makes the mystery of the lighthouse keepers of Eilean Mor fascinate you? What emotions does this tale evoke in you, and how does it affect your view of the world? Thank you for joining me on this extraordinary journey into the world of mysteries and ambiguities related to the disappearance of the lighthouse keepers of Eilean Mor. I hope that this story of 3 men who vanished without a trace has touched your imagination as much as it has mine. If this story has sparked your interest, don't forget to give a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every word from you is valuable to me and helps me create even more fascinating content. Want to explore more such extraordinary mysteries and enigmas? Subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future episodes. More captivating stories await that will take you into the darkest corners of history and pop culture. Thank you for being with me, and see you in the next episode.